So, welcome to our second session again with Lola. I'm Angeline Carvalho from Shield. Lola is from Gen Z, New Zealand. And the third panelist is John Kavanagh, um, who is on his way because he was in the last one. Uh, so, just to give an idea of what we're talking about today, this was your idea, Lola. So, what I've understood is if we do the social media bans, then what are we going to do? What's the alternative, right? Is that your
Mm,
idea for the what we're going to talk about?
yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, we're watching countries around the world make the move to ban social media for under 16s, and I think the it's important to have the conversations around the different ways that we're keeping young people safe online. What actually happens when we do those things? What happens when we put these restrictions in place? So yeah, I'm excited to have a chat today.
So, tell me your perspective on it, right? So, I guess if you think about social media is there, as you said, it meets a need, right?
Mm,
Like in the last, so I grew up, when I was your age, there was no internet. Probably there's some people who had internet, but there was no other options, right? So I was thinking if we talk about the needs that it meets for young people, then we can talk about what the different possibilities are, right, to meet those needs and kind of compare because it's a very good important tension that that we need to understand. Okay, how are we going to meet those needs if we ban social media?
mm. Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Is that everything has been intentionally designed around social media to meet the needs of connection, right? Young people are seeking these forms of connection and ways of building community, and so social media is a really key part of that. Um, and I guess at its core, that's what social media was created to do. All right, when Instagram was first launched, it was a place to share photos to your family and friends of updates on your life, and that was uh, solving a problem of people maybe not seeing each other. They were disconnected from each other, maybe because they lived in different states or countries, or just because they weren't able to meet in person. And so that was solving a problem of disconnection. But I think what we've found ourselves in is social media kind of rode the wave of connection and building connection and community among everyone in society. And now we're finding ourselves at the other kind of end of that wave where it's almost like helping us to disconnect in a way, like we're disconnecting from one another through social media. Um, and this is a result of many different like design practices and ways that social media companies and big tech companies have designed their platforms. Um, but I guess, yeah, what actually does happen when we remove that altogether for our under 16-year-olds? What does that look like? And I don't know. I mean, we haven't seen that happen here in New Zealand. We have our counterpart over in Australia who's started that process. But the need at its core is that connection. Kia ora, John. Hi, John.
Hey, sorry, I had some technical things pop up,
No
but it's
worries.
it's good to see you here. I was just saying backstage, Angeline to Lola, that I love the concept of co-design. I don't hear it as much as um, I think it needs to be a central part of what we do in a lot of ways. So yeah,
So
go ahead. Sorry.
so yeah, my question is to you, Laura. I was thinking about just if we compare what this is going to sound horrible, but I think it's important to kind of think about it. Like when, as I said, there was no internet when I was young, so the we met the needs in completely different ways, right? So if young people aren't on social media and all these needs that you described, aren't met. What we did was we met in shopping malls, at restaurants, at people's houses. But I think the expectations were completely different, right? Back then, because you didn't expect to meet, or in clubs, like I did band, or sports. So is this something that, I mean, could that kind of replace social media? I mean, or do you have ideas about, 'cause John's younger than me, so maybe you already had the experience with, the internet connections as well. So, I mean, could offline replace what you described, or is it really like we have to find another safe online solution?
John, I'll hand it to you. You can go first.
Okay, yeah. So I just want to clarify. Are you saying like online gatherings replacing interaction?
Offline, offline.
Oh,
On,
um,
because we're talking about replacements for social media, right?
yeah,
If we
yeah.
ban social media for young people,
Uh,
how are they going to meet the needs like that Lola described of the connection and
yeah. No, I think it's yeah. Wow. I think it's pretty difficult to know off the bat because if there's one thing like I don't know, when I was a kid, like if something was banned, it's more attractive in a lot of ways. And so you might have this, bifurcation of kids who try to get away with things versus those that don't. And a lot of parenting comes into play. I think there's like so many aspects that make every kid's perspective a bit unique. And it depends on how parents guide that conversation. My parents were very specifically like they avoided technology as much as they could. Um, and they kind of missed the whole computer era and paid bills by hand. Like even as like 5 years ago, they would send bills in the mail and such. So that gave me a more traditional childhood. But there may be more parents that are gung ho about things. And then kids are that way too. So you have this like kind of electron cloud of like different attractions to different things. And the fact that these sites still exist, that could be a way that people look at, like kids look at something rather attractive, even though it's not for their age range in general. Um, the one thing that is really interesting as research has come out is that a lot of kids just don't feel good when they're on social media. So that's like the ray of hope that I have. Like they know it doesn't feel good, but they've been digitally native and they're born into this environment where they have to use it to build that connection. So it'll be really interesting to see how children, especially as they get into their teenage years where their social bonds are more important than family bonds. It'll be really interesting to see how they tend to gravitate and spend time together
Mm.
and the allowances that parents give them. Um, since social media is banned, people still have like group chats and, various like phone related things. And I think that I was kind of in that era around 15, 16. I don't think I had much of a problem with that. The real problem I noticed with my friend group was when we were all like sitting around a fire and half the people had their phones buried in their face because they were on social media. But when we were in the old school phone days and just texting, we had a lot of togetherness. And so I think that era right before social media hit was actually really cool because you had the freedom and autonomy. You had your own, like in America, we had cars. So it was really cool to have your own car and have your cell phone and a little bit of money that you could spend to go out. And so you were communicating with people, you had the freedom to move around, but you weren't absorbed into this like cyber network. And I think that if that can be engineered, I think that is pretty cool. So I think at least maybe this initial generation I've hoped for could be there. Sorry, that was like a sketch of thoughts, but I hope that makes sense.
it makes sense to me. What do you think, Lola, of our different experiences based on what you described?
Yeah, I mean, I think we often, like, I'm noticing this conversation in New Zealand a lot lately, is that the conversation is only about let's ban social media and not what comes after it, right? So that was the premise of this conversation here today was what comes after if we ban social media or if we are removing or restricting young people from accessing spaces online. But actually, like, why can't those two things exist at once? I guess, like, why are we not teaching young people to use digital spaces and access social media safely and in a healthy way, while also increasing their access to uh, in-person connection, programs that they can attend, or um, get-togethers, gatherings of community. I think we've really lost that in the last even 5 years, post COVID-19, trying to regain our sense of community in person has been really, really difficult for a lot of people, for a multitude of reasons, economic, and societal barriers. Uh, but I think if we work really hard to make both of those things true at once, like young people can have safe and healthy and good interactions online, and they can also have really safe, healthy, good interactions offline as well. If we create space and like build capacity for both of those things to happen at once, that's when we hit the sweet spot, I think. Um, and yeah, 100%, like what is being left out of the conversation right now in New Zealand is they're only talking about banning social media and not talking about any other digital safety restrictions. And so that is also where it becomes dangerous, right? So we're only talking about a blanket ban for one very specific and niche part of the digital harm conversation, and nothing else is being kind of talked about as well. So how are we, all of these things are interconnected, AI, social media, things that go from, like bullying online can translate from online and then become offline. And so these conversations can't just happen in isolation, is I think really important to note as well.
I love that. I mean, I really love that point. Yeah. And honestly, just as you said, like in the previous talk, I hadn't thought of something so simple, right? Like if you're going to ban
Mm.
something, you have to have an alternative. And I also think that I love having heard from you, John, as well, because I didn't experience that. Like
Yeah.
there is that you can be connected without the social media. That's also something we've kind of forgotten, right? But you have to invest in it, and you have to also the offline options. You're thinking about now. I live in a place where people naturally go outside and spend time outside. When I lived in a large city, I remember it was always a big problem, right? Like the parks were sometimes iffy, and you didn't know like where to go. You didn't know the trust, where to trust. So yeah, it has to be very intentional to work, right?
Mm.
And going back to what you said, John,
Mhm.
about the research saying that young people are also happy not to be on social media. Is that something you feel as well, Lola? Because I also always say that, but having been young such a long time ago, I mean, do you have that feeling as well among your peers that if there's a real alternative that you'll naturally go for it? Or is that something that we adults just tell ourselves? It's just, I mean,
I mean,
older people, not.
I haven't seen this research, and I'm really, really keen to read it after our talk today. But I think going back to something I said in my talk earlier is that young people are not a monolith. Like, not every young person has the same experience, and so not every solution will work for you, all young people. I do believe that a social media ban for some young people will be extremely effective and will be what they need. But I also believe that a ban for other under 16-year-olds will cause more harm, because it pushes them to the edges of the internet, right? The unregulated, scarier places of the internet that are not monitored or even known about by some adults. So I think that's the kind of risk that we take when taking this research at face value. And I often see governments doing this, right? Like they'll just take a horrifying statistic and plaster it everywhere, and now that's the research that they're basing their kind of solutions off of, their laws off of. yeah, but I think like I'm a big believer in two things can be true at the same time, and I have said this a lot, like just in the last hour, um, but we can have multiple solutions. I don't like there is no one solution to the digital harm that young people are facing online. Just as there is no one harm that young people are facing online, just as there is no single like positive benefit to young people being online on social media. So yeah, I mean, again, I haven't read the research, but I'm interested in it, and I think that's a really fascinating kind of take. Is that if young people are given spaces to explore and create and build community outside of social media, will they take it? And what that's saying is yes, they will. In my experience, when there are safe and fun spaces created for young people to engage in, absolutely they'll jump at the chance to engage in that. Um, but it's really hard to cultivate that. It's extremely difficult. It's not an easy thing to do, and it's not a simple thing to do. It's very time intensive and resource intensive. So it just has to be one part of the solution. Yeah.
I think this goes back to the co-creation that you were mentioning in your previous talk. Like, this definitely needs to be co-creation, I expect, right? Because how else are you going to find the right things to invest in? As you say, it's very resource intensive.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, this is a really great conversation, I think, based on following up on what you just talked about in the last talk. I don't know, John, if you have any other thoughts about that. I mean, I haven't heard about any discussion in the US about social media ban. I'm busy discussing other things. So I don't know if that's something like, have you heard it
Uh,
where you
no,
are?
the U.S. is not pro-regulation at all in this administration. So you're not going to have even an inkling of that unless it's a state-related thing, and I'm sure it would be challenged over time. I agree with Lola. Yeah, young people are not a monolith. That's why I try to give the electron cloud thing. There's research suggesting that like across several different areas that you know young people are self-aware that social media does make them nervous. They feel better when they're not using it. But a lot of it is they kind of feel like there's no other way to connect with their peers. And that's like sort of the way to connect with people. And if you don't have phones and stuff at certain ages, you feel left out and get isolated. And that, that 24/7 being constantly on instead of having those breaks that normal people have in interactions before the internet um, seem to be important for the regulating the nervous system. So yeah, but I'm sure there's other studies that counteract that. So I very much agree with that. Two things can be true at the same time, and it's going to be messy, and it's not going to be perfect. And the digital natives didn't ask to be brought into this world with phones shoved in their faces and such. And some people may thrive from it and do very well, and others might not. So um, I think that's a really good point, Lola. So thank you for bringing that in. In terms of the US, yeah, it's just who knows? Who knows right now
That's
about
true. Yeah.
anything related to the US, honestly.
Yeah, no, I really thank both of you for this conversation. It has been very valuable for me, and I hope for those who are watching as well. Oh, we have a question from Jeff. Should social media literacy be part of a national policy? Um, yeah, as a number of states have enacted age limits for social media. It's a piecemeal solution at best, with wildly diverging solutions. I'll pass that on to you, Lola.
Mm.
What's your view on that?
Yes, 100%. I think there should be social media literacy wider than that, digital media literacy included in our education curriculum. Um, I'm not sure about what happens in other countries, but I know in New Zealand we don't currently have anything like that, and that would be definitely something I would be keen to include. But I think there's so much that we don't have in our curriculum here in New Zealand. Like we currently don't have mental health education in our curriculum, and so there's like very very basic things that are missing that we also need to have wider conversations around. And I feel like social media literacy may be a bit too specific for us to start with. But I think wider than that, just being like, what does it look like to be a good digital citizen? Keeping yourself safe online, keeping other people safe online is really important, especially for kind of in New Zealand, we call them year 6 to year 8, which is kind of ages 9 to 12. So I'm not sure what grade that would be anywhere else. But yeah, kind of that age is really, really key to bring in those conversations because that's when young people are starting to enter the online world. Um, yeah, so yes, definitely. In terms of wider like national, I guess, policies, government initiatives, that's another conversation altogether. I absolutely think workplaces should be having these conversations as well, but from a youth perspective, definitely in the education curriculum. I'm interested to hear what you think, though, John. Like from a US perspective, I'm not sure what you guys have over there.
Yeah, I think it really depends on what the word policy means. Like,
Mm,
are there benchmarks? Are there ways that we're doing it, or are we just introducing it to the curriculum? I remember I took in high school just very quickly. I took a like social media literacy, I think week or something, and the teachers weren't that prepared, and it didn't make much sense, and it was kind of boring, and it was like, really throwing lobs at like, hey, do you think this is real news or fake news? Like,
yeah.
but I think that's a more serious thing now with AI and a general rule of don't trust at all until things
Mm,
are verified is, a new shift. You see images that look real or see news that could potentially just be deep fakes. So yeah, it's really difficult to go about that. But I think the educational system's kind of busted in the US, um, by design, really. But I think the fact that there's not any social media, like being a citizen in a social media, what does it mean to be a good internet citizen, or
mm,
steward? Those types of things, I think more broadly should be addressed too. Like you said, that's a little narrow. When we talk social media, especially since social media is shifting to entertainment, like it's more like YouTube than it is like getting people together and having group conversations and having just your friends that you're following. So yeah.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. We're actually out of time. We're over. We've run into the next talk. So I hope people jump right into it. Our speaker's here, which is why I'm a little bit more relaxed than I usually would be. So, but we'll jump through. Thank you, both of you. It's very important conversation. Also, the question about social media literacy. We'll definitely follow up on this. We'll stay in contact with Lola as well. And thank you for those who are listening and those who are watching afterwards. And step into the next talk with Stephen. Thank you. Bye.
thank you so much.
Thank you.